Hey guys, it's Paradise and I'm joined with 26 because the beta is over now. So we thought we'd do a little impressions of the beta, a little debrief of everything because it was a pretty meaty play session across several days in that beta. We played a lot of the weapons, we've explored the map, we've hunted a bunch of monsters, as I'm sure many of you guys have. So 26, do you want to have any opening thoughts before we go through sort of the different points of different things from character creation to the
Yeah,
weapons, the story, all that kind of stuff, and we'll get through it all.
just the first thing is just going through withdrawals from actually playing the game. Like, even on that day where they had like a small gap and we couldn't play, it was like I just wanted to get back in. I wish there was like 1 or 2 more days so that I can really sweat out some of the weapons and like raid out. Basically, we did get a thoroughly good time on it, but there was some other weapons that I wanted to test out a little bit more that I didn't get too much hands on because you were handling them. Basically, like the charge blade, I would have loved to like get 10 more hunts on that and then see what was really going on there with like all of that stuff, especially the IG that we're probably going to be talking about later on in the video, because I know that's a hot topic, is definitely something I would have got to like to get more hands on. But the weapons that I did play, I loved that, and I loved the time that I had with the demo, so it would be nice to go back in. But in general I was pretty impressed with the game as a whole, but there are some things that Capcom is Capcoming on, if you get what I'm saying.
Definitely. No, just to expand on that as well. Yeah, that it was a long enough time that the beta was open that you really got like your teeth sunk into it, and then it's over and you wake up and you're like, let me load up Monster Hunter Wilds. Oh wait, I can't. So yeah, we're really excited to play more. I'm assuming the beta or demo will come in the future, because traditionally in the past games they've staggered it with like a weekend here and a weekend there, and then it comes out like a few weeks before launch. So I'm assuming it will come back in the future at some point, but we really have no idea when or for how long. But let's go through a little, almost sequentially through the experience. Yeah, go on.
Before I say anything, thanks guys for all the support on the like videos that we did put out during that time. It took us a long time to do those videos. It was basically wake up from like 6 o'clock in the morning to like 12 o'clock at like night, just making those videos for you guys and making sure that they were putting out like actual like quality content that you may learn some stuff from, and the little niche stuff that people haven't necessarily picked up on, and more advanced stuff as well. We didn't want to just like jump into the training room and just record like us there live. We might be doing that for the full game as well as like an alternative format, but for this one we kind of wanted to give you something that was really nice and really created and curated and bespoke as much as possible, even with like the little button prompts and everything. We were planning that stuff out for like a couple of days, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it and it went over okay. So
Yeah, definitely tell us like your thoughts and everything on those new move guides, because we put a lot of passion into them, and I think the reception was pretty good. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think. Hopefully, yeah, the button prompts make it extra helpful to follow through. And again, it was a lot of time like sweating on those weapons to try and figure everything out, because you know we all got access to the beta at the same time, so we're just like we're sinking in those hours to like fully understand those new moves and mechanics to try and convey them to you guys in hopefully as easy a way as possible. But I want to reel ourselves back to the beginning of the first day of the beta, to the character creation, which as time has gone on is even impressing me even more with the creations and the pictures that are out there online. So initially, you know, I threw my hunter together, made him look sort of adjacent to myself, as I love to do in games. 26, I know you've got your like Monster Hunter character that you recreate through the series, but the character creator is pretty impressive. There's a lot of sliders, there's inspiration, I feel like, from the Dragon's Dogma character creator. A little like Dragon's Dogma was almost like a slight tech demo for some of this wild stuff that we're getting. A lot there's I was very impressed with the amount that you could do, and from seeing people posting like handsome Squidward to freaking Pokemon Palicos, I'm very happy with the character creator. How about you?
Yeah, I think seeing one from yesterday, which was just straight up like the Final Fantasy 14 developer, like Yoshi P, like it just looks like him, and it's just nuts. And obviously you have like Geralt basically like in every game that looks, your Geralt looks sick as well. But my character that I created, I was pretty happy with as well. So I'm really impressed, because the character creator is very on point for like Monster Hunter compared to where it was for like World and some of the previous Monster Hunter games. It's like a leap and bounds ahead of that as well. I would like to see that kind of extended to the Palicos as well. I don't feel like the Palicos had as many options. Hopefully they can expand that out via like more like content updates or whatever, but for the characters, just so on point, and it's funny seeing all the posts about them as well. We saw Keanu, we saw like loads of different people, so it's cool.
The Keanu Reeves one was really funny. Yeah, making a Geralt reveal was pretty fun too. Like, you know, if you can properly just make other game characters or celebrities, then you know that the character creator is pretty well fleshed out with some, you know, some good control and sliders. So yeah, character creator is a big double like thumbs up from me in terms of the depth to it. And then of course there was the first sort of introduction into the beta with that story mission, which sort of seems like it may be the literal start of the game. It's kind of how it felt like. You know, there's the Sambo, and you're rescuing the person, and you're riding on the sacred for the. It's like you're going into the Forbidden Lands for the first time, and they're discovering what the sacrets are and what they can do, and all this kind of stuff. And it, like, you tell me what you think, 26, but I thought it was pretty cinematic and a pretty like enticing experience to like draw you into this world. Because traditionally, when I think of Monster Hunter, I'm just sort of thrown out there into some environment and I'm just killing a monster, but this one was really like setting up the scene and the characters more so than I think I really remember in past games.
Definitely a step up in terms of like storytelling and like the dynamic nature of the actual story. I think they are definitely getting there for kind of telling a more immersive story, but I'm going to say something positive and I'm going to say something negative about it that I kind of really found out. It's really good for getting people into the game and getting them hooked. And I want to see if they kind of keep the same narrative that they've had through like old Monster Hunter games where it's like, monsters are disrupting the village. Oh, halfway through, the apexes come, blah, blah, blah. Or the flagship has come as to destroy it. No, there's a bigger monster. Hopefully they've broken away from that narrative, and I can see them telling a more in-depth and character-driven story, especially for our hunter. I kind of really like that our hunter actually talks. Like, didn't really hear anybody complaining about that as much, and it kind of adds to the story that can actually be told. So I definitely thought that was good. But something that I didn't really like is, and because we had to play the story mission like a number of different times just to get back to the barrel, because the only way that you could get back to the barrel in the beta was deleting your character, restarting again. So I had to play that. That whole first bit is completely on rails. All you have to do is literally shoot the Balahara in the like sandpit, and you probably don't even have to do that, and it will get you through that first bit. So very much, I hope that they don't have like a ton of just on rail sections that are like pseudo scripted. If you are going to do scripted like set pieces, to me it better be like Uncharted. Like I have some type of like interactivity there, even if it's just like moving my arm to go like. I don't know. They had that in the shooting, but it just didn't feel as dynamic as it does in Uncharted, if you get what I'm saying.
No, I totally get what you mean. Yeah. It was a super linear level up until you were fighting. Even when, to be fair, even the Chattacabra bit was linear because you couldn't leave the area once you started the fight. You had to wait until whatever time had passed or threshold been hit, and then it would move, and then you could follow it. So it was definitely very much on rails. But with that, it means they can set up some like epic moments, and I'm sure if there are those kind of sort of more like set piece on rail creations for missions, when we're going to have some colossal monsters, it's probably going to be like pretty nuts. But I think the fact that we had to replay it a bunch to get back to that training probably didn't help there. I'm glad that you brought up the voiced hunter. I also want to talk about slightly on that, and also the Palico, because it was said previously in interviews that we had translated that they'd really taken a lot of care into not making the hunter just like talk constantly and too much, because that's just never been a thing in Monster Hunter. So they've tried to find that balance, and I think they have. From the little bit that we all played in the beta, I think they did find that balance, because it's not like your hunter's just yapping all the time, and it's not like he's just always silent. So I think it was cool that he chimed in when he did. And then on the other side of it, you have the Palico voice, which again, from different interviews and things, they were kind of going for like an audio assistant kind of thing, like you would have like with a Ghost in Destiny, or you would have with like Paimon in like Genshin. The Palico is now there to like shout out like, "There's a trap over here," or like, "Look out," you know. So I personally didn't mind it, but I'm curious what you thought. Like, I thought it was fine, but I think for some people it's going to be grating.
You know, I love those annoying little characters in every game, like from World of Final Fantasy with like Tama, I think even Vern in
No, Vern was too far for
like
me.
literally a line of Vern going like, "Okay, buddy," and I just love as well. Like, so those annoying little characters, like even Paimon doesn't really like annoy me. I find them kind of like endearing in some way. I know that's like a controversial opinion and people hate them. Don't come for me, guys. It's just me. I'm broken like that for that particular thing. It's just something that I like. But I can fully understand if people want to turn their voices to like the original voices or whatever, because sometimes they were yapping a little bit too much, those palicos on the side. But not annoyance to me personally, but I can understand why it might be grating on some people. You know, I hope they have additional voice options as well. I don't feel like the main character or the Palico had enough voice options in the game, so maybe that's one of the things that they're setting up for, like that little Capcom's microtransaction special there to sell us some more voices by giving us not that many options.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the Palico voice, it was just a weird difference. You know, you're just hunting there with your Palico and you're just hearing it call things out, and it's just weird to get used to. But you know, you can toggle it off to the meows if you want to. But you know, let's talk about the world itself, the map that we got to explore, and in that you've also got the weather system, which is obviously a big thing in Wilds. I feel like I've got a little bit to say about all of it, so I'm going to pass it off to you first, 2-6.
Yeah, the thing about Wilds was the game could look very pretty, but most of the time it was not pretty because of the weather conditions. I think that's probably what you're hinting at, what you're about to say, basically, in terms of in the daytime, there was times where we were walking around absolutely gorgeous. We're walking around. If you just slow walk through the world, 10 out of 10, the game looks actually like proper, like it's going to be next gen and like breathtaking. And then some other times when you're in the inclemency, you can't see anything. It'll be interesting to see how that is impacted in other areas as well. Like say we go to Scarlet Forest, like how much of that downtime is going to be during the downpour or during the other, like the fallow periods or whatever. Those dry periods don't necessarily add a lot to the aesthetic of the actual game. I feel like Monster Hunter benefits from bright, vibrant colors and not necessarily something that we have in the more recent Monster Hunter. I think Rise and Sunbreak had a bit more colors, but World especially had a filter on the screen in terms of the kind of tone of the actual like filter, and it kind of dumbed down the colors a little bit. I think the same as hair. It kind of washes it out, and why?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I like the weather systems. I like the changes and the idea that different monsters come out at different times, and it changes the feel of the world. I really like all of that. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of like a big filter over the screen that just washes everything out and makes everything look quite dull. And you know what? I'm actually okay with it if we had control over it. So what I mean by that is, if I could just have my character whip out a campfire and rest, or just go back to camp and just chill in the tent and just pass time of day, I think surely I really hope they're gonna add that in, because having that control would not only be nice for like hunting specific things at different times of day, but also sometimes you just want to go out and explore the world when it's sunny and it looks nice, rather than like, to be fair, like the inclemency, the actual like sand tide was still visually interesting with the lightning strikes and everything going on. It was that other weather condition, which I forgot the name, because you had the plenty, which is the vibrant, you had the inclemency, which is the sand tide.
I think it's the fallow or something.
The fallow, that was it. So in the fallow, it's like the fallow was just like,
it's just dry.
Everything looked dry and like washed out.
Drier than your chicken.
Yeah, so I wasn't a big fan of the fallow, and I do hope we will have actual control over it in some way to pass time. I think that will be a really helpful big thing just for hunting and exploring. But you know what? Let's just jump to the multiplayer and the like environment link stuff, because it kind of links in here. So if they don't add a way to skip time or pass time to the specific weather system that you want, there is that environment link system, which is a really interesting way that they've done it, because we've explored a bit with the way that you team up with people, both with posting quests or exploring the world. So you've got the party link first of all, which is like you and up to 3 friends can make a party link, and then each of you can open up an environment link, And once your environment link is open, the other people in the party link can join on that person's environment. So it's like me going from my world with what's ever happening into your world with whatever world state is happening in yours. So if you can't pass time, I can see this system being a pseudo replacement for that, where you're with your buddies and you're all exploring until, oh, the sand tides happen, everyone join on me, let's hunt Raid Owl. So there is like a cool way that they've kind of worked around that, but for like single player and just exploring on your own, I really hope that they do add like those systems in. But what did you think of like the way that they did the multiplayer system with that party and environment link?
I thought it was okay, but I don't think it was very intuitive in terms of what they were doing. I understand what they were going for. They're trying to get kind of like these separate instances out and keep players together while being in separate instances so they can do and go about their business. But once you're in environment link, you can correct me if I'm wrong or we didn't find out how to do this, but I swear you cannot post actual like quests like you can do if you're not in that environmental link, which makes it a bit harder to kind of keep up the constant stream of quests unless you're going out to physically that point in the environment. It would be nice to go back out and like hunt the Chatacabra in the sunny weather or hunt the Raid Owl that was in the Sandtide that you could post them, basically all of that stuff. I understand maybe why they've gone for it, basically because they want to make sure that those environments are not like refreshed or players become out of sync. But I feel like if you're going to have the party link system as a whole, it would be nice to have the environment link also function with quests in the same way. And I feel like the whole thing, as like gamers playing now, all we want to do is just press one button and invite all of our friends to be in the same lobby and visually see them and then go out on hunts. Like, that should be the system rather than having to accept 2 invites just to get into an environment link and then not being able to like do a ton of stuff while you're in the environment link as well.
Yeah, there was some finicky things with it. Like you say, it felt like the environment link was only there to explore the world, whether that was hunting a monster in the world or just going around together. Because yeah, the posting quests, maybe it was like server issues as well. Like sometimes you just couldn't post a quest. So there was some like weird things there. But what I will say is the crossplay we did actually test, and it seemed pretty good. Like,
yeah, crossplay was good.
There was no problems, right?
Yeah, crossplay was good, and you could actually rejoin. So even if you did disconnect like we did, you can actually rejoin, which isn't necessarily something that you can do in all Monster Hunter games. So it's nice to have that option, especially when you disconnect. Hopefully that means that you never get that spot where there's like a empty spot that somebody can't join in on as well, which was a problem in previous Monster Hunter games as well.
Yeah. I'll just quickly jump back to the world itself, because it was a pretty decently sized map. I think the amount of, we had a few days to play the beta, and I feel like pretty much got to learn a lot of the map as well. So, it's just one of the areas. We already know that of 2 more, and I'm expecting there'll be at least be 1 or 2 more after this as well. So all of them together is leading to a pretty sizable space to explore. But for the actual, what we got to play in the beta, I thought it was pretty cool. You had the desert area. You had the more like sandy area. You had the little oasis in the middle of the desert. You had like the Raid Owl nest off to the side, and there was a few different like climby areas and the underground bit in between with the Balaharas. So I quite liked the map. Again, I think during the good weather, the plenty, it just all looked amazing. But then in the other weathers, it looked pretty like grey and washed out. So the experience of the map does widely change based on that weather. But what did you think of like the world and its size and what we got to play?
I don't know why I imagined in my head that the world was going to be slightly bigger, but for what we did get, I'm still like obviously like satisfied with, because it's like massive compared to the areas that we did get in previous Monster Hunter games, and we know there's going to be additional locales. The attention to detail in the areas was really cool. Like there's like the sand and the steps and everything just looked good when you're all like walking around and doing stuff as well. And I like, yeah, as you're saying, the differentiation in the biomes when you're going to places. On the last day I was walking around just discovering like little things that I had never seen before, and it's so satisfying to even just go around gathering, because they've changed like the animation for like mining now, and it just looks cool. Like the just little chimes of stuff is that very Monster Hunter-y and very what I like about Monster Hunter as well. So it's nice seeing all of it come together in a bigger game. It's definitely that massive guiding lands type feel that we suspected it was going to feel like, and it's definitely that where it's like you're walking between these different biomes, you're discovering monsters, and new monsters are coming in. It's very cool in a way, and I can't wait to see how it all comes together when all the areas are like together and it's all properly seamless or open world as they like to say. So yeah.
There is one thing with this like large map and the seamlessness that's going to be in there with the other locales that I wasn't too sure about, and I'm not sure if it was a beta thing, but the monsters were like running away a lot, I felt like, and I think that I was seeing other people talk about that as well. So
Yeah.
you'd be like wailing on the monster, and if you use traps and environmental rocks and stuff, then the monster was just going to get clapped and die. But if you didn't use those things, the monster would just run away, and you chase it to the next area, bonk it a few times, it would run away again. So I feel like it could have been a beta thing where they over-tuned that to make you explore and go through the different areas, because that's like something that they would probably want players to do, is to see around the map, which means the monster pulling you around the map is a way to do that. But it is can be a bit annoying when monsters just run away too often, right?
Oh, definitely. I definitely think it's more of a beta thing. I think they do it just to make it a bit easier, just to give players time to kind of recover from hunts as well. It's not just to show us the map, but to actually be like, oh, the monster's running away. Now you have time to heal up. Now you have time to kind of eat any like well done steaks that you need, sharpen your weapon, and get back into the hunt essentially. And I think that's also why they had scripted moments where other monsters will come in as well and attack the monster that you're fighting, just to give you that breathing room, because there's going to be like newbies like jumping on for the first time and kind of really trying to learn what the game is all about, and they don't want it to have a rough experience, right? So they tone it down a little bit so they're not getting like destroyed. But that being said,
yeah,
I hope it's not like that in the final game and they haven't toned it down, because it's just assumptions at this point.
Yeah. Let's talk about the performance, because there's been a wide range of experiences out there, and particularly with the memeable square monsters that we see, which is just hilarious every time I see those clips. And I didn't get to experience that in the game myself, but it looked pretty funny. So the performance is a very interesting one, because we played the PlayStation first beta, and then we switched over to PC for the second, like, all platforms beta. So on PlayStation, I can talk about the performance mode, which is what I basically played the whole time on, and it felt like all right. I think performance mode would definitely be like my preference. And looking back through my like footage from the PlayStation, it was fairly smooth, and there wasn't any like groundbreaking game breaking like problems in terms of the performance. Like the beta didn't crash for me. There wasn't any points where I had like some crazy stuttering on the PlayStation. But that being said, there was some variability in there, and maybe the frame rate could have been higher. We don't have PlayStation 5 Pros, so I'm running on the base PlayStation 5. I'm not sure exactly what the difference would be going up to a Pro. But what did you think? Just for the PlayStation, and we'll move over to PC afterwards.
So I stuck to the graphics mode, and it just felt like there was a little bit of like input lag, but I'm guessing that's just down to it being like a lower frame rate than when we did switch over to the PC basically. But in general, it ran okay. That's all I'm gonna say. On PlayStation, it ran okay. I would hope for it to have a higher frame rate than what it was running at, but you were saying that performance mode was good enough. But I did hear a few people saying it did look very blurry on performance mode, so I wasn't immediately like going to be like, I'm going to jump on performance mode. But I'll see how the improvements like grow as the game gets closer to launch. And this is one of the reasons that I didn't want like a demo or open beta test like happening right now. I feel like this is one of the like the topics that is going to sour or engulf the conversation around the game. And if Capcom took a little bit extra time, they could have got like squeezed a little bit more performance and got the game running a little bit smoother on for us basically. But I guess also they need to test the game anyway, so it's kind of like a catch-22 where they need it in the hands to see what the performance is like on like more different things, and like in the hands of more players and out there in the real world to see where they can get those performance gains from. But it was just okay. It was okay. I know to other people it's not acceptable, but for me, I found it just like okay-ish. It wasn't great.
Well, let's talk about the PC now, because there's a lot to unpack with the PC, because the initial experience on PC was you really did feel the bump in frames and that sort of input lag that you kind of feel on PlayStation. And also, to clarify, as of course, we are making videos. We're playing through capture cards and things, which also does, I feel like, add a bit of extra delay on top of that. So it's never ideal to play through a capture card if you're looking at just pure input speed in action games. But, you know, that it is what it is. But moving over to PC, the actual input and the frame bump initially felt really, really good. And then as I was playing more, and I was playing basically everything maxed out, we have very good PCs. We've got 4080s. My CPU could probably do with an upgrade. I do, but it is an i7 still.
It's i7 from like a couple of years ago. I can't remember which ones that we have, but they're decent. Like they handle other games run at between like 90 to 110. Like,
yeah, there's a lot to unpack with PC performance, but I will just start off by saying I didn't have crashes. So that's you know, there are a few that when it comes to performance for me, there's always like game breaking things that I look at as a priority. So does the game like crash and just die on its own? So it wasn't crashing for me. There wasn't like dips down to like 10 FPS. There was variability there. I would say a majority of my experience was between the 45 to 55 FPS range. Some areas maybe momentarily dipping a little lower than that, but there wasn't like, you weren't going from like 60 frames to 10 frames where it was like you sort of feel like you're getting a slideshow. But it wasn't perfect either. So playing on pretty much all max settings, DLSS on, balanced, with the good machines we've got, I was okay with the performance, but I was hoping for more. What about you?
I think it's the same. I think even though we're talking about performance, let's just clarify as well. It's kind of like a more like devil's advocate thing that we are doing here, because like I still had an enjoyment even if when it was playing between like 30 to 50 on the PC or whatever, like I was still enjoying the game. But performance in a game 2024, like I was expecting a bit more out of it when it comes to Capcom's flagship title essentially. And the fact that there were some times when I was fighting Raydal with you in multiplayer and it was getting super choppy, like I'm telling you, like there was points where it felt like I was actually just having missed inputs as a result because it was dropping and the frame variability was just like going all over the place because Raydal was just throwing down sparks. There was like fire on the grass and all of that stuff, which is to be expected when there's like fire and particle effects firing off. But if you're going to do this, Capcom, please do it correctly so that we can have like an action game, because it's an action game. I think that's where that expectation comes from. Action games have this kind of expectations that they'll have that really fresh and snappy response and like feel like nice and visually impactful when you play them of 60 FPS. And because it's not really necessarily hitting that, even on high-end PCs, these are like decent PCs, top-end PCs, that it's a bit rough for people, especially on people that don't necessarily have as high-end PCs as us. So hoping for more as the game iterates. This was an open beta test. They didn't say it was like a finalized version of the performance or whatever. Hopefully they optimize it as it becomes closer to launch. I don't know what you guys think about it. If you feel like they're going to optimize it and they're actually going to reach those goals, we can hope that they do. The demos, the way that demos work usually as well is that they're splintered from months ago, so they could have already have made those performance gains before it's gone to like submission and stuff. So it could have been even fixed already in the next build that we see when it comes to a demo or whatever, because we should be getting another demo because they commonly do like more than one demo. Maybe we might see those performance gains there.
I will say as well though, I did actually play a little bit of it on my laptop, which I was pleasantly surprised it was playable. Again, not perfect, a bit variable, but even on like high settings, you could play it and it wasn't too much of a problem. I only played single player, so I don't know how pulling other people in with their moves popping off and the big explosions everywhere might obviously impact it, but for the single player on the laptop was actually all right. But it seems like our experience with top-end PCs was like, it was playable, it was all right. But then, obviously, people without the latest hardware and 40 series cards, you know, they were getting the origami monsters, right?
And that's a funny thing as well. I love seeing all the memes that have come out about the origami monsters and stuff, and it's very endearing seeing them as well, especially origami like Raydal. I saw origami like Chapter yesterday. That was pretty cool. one of the things I do want to say actually is, and I think we talked about it on the first day as soon as we booted up the PC version, this game definitely feels like it was built for PC rather than console, when in actuality, like, previous Monster Hunter games more so felt like they were built for like console in terms of like the feature sets that they have. Like, they've got way more options for PC this time. The game runs a bit smoother visually, it just looks better. Obviously that's going to become with like the new hardware and the better hardware that you get on PC, but it just, the PC experience, if I was to suggest one to go for and play, then it's definitely PC to have like good Monster Hunter experience at the moment.
If your PC can handle it, that is.
If your PC can handle it. High end or not. Like, we don't know about the other builds for PCs and like what the minimum is that you need to kind of handle it at the range that we were playing it at, but when I was playing it, it was like a night and day difference when I hopped on from like console. Basically, it was like, oh yeah, this is cool. There's no like annoyances in terms of like the visuals or like all of that stuff.
Yeah, let's move over to the weapons, and we'll talk about this briefly because we will go a bit more in depth on this on the channel soon. Obviously, there was no new weapon, and it doesn't look like there will be one from what we can tell, but fingers crossed for the full game, you never know. But each weapon definitely had a bunch of different new things, and if it didn't have like super flashy moves, then it had a lot of ways to interact and integrate like the new focus mode and stuff like that. So for me, my overall sort of overview of the weapons was I was pretty pleased that each weapon had new toys and things to play with, and with any iteration of Monster Hunter where they usually do that, the thing that gets me excited is now you've got, you know, your weapon that you're familiar with, that you love, but you've got extra things to use and master. And I think for a lot of the weapons, what I liked about these changes is that they actually iterated on the core gameplay loop for a lot of the weapons. So whether it be Charge Blade, that fundamentally changes how Savage Axe mode works in a kind of, basically like they buffed it, but also alternated how SAED worked with extra like long strings to go into it, or something like Greatsword where it had like a few new things with like its offset attack and stuff, but it has massive implications to the gameplay loop with the perfect guarding and the power clashing and the focus mode to turn and redirect your true charge slashes. I was pretty happy with the weapons that I played and the changes that they had and how it felt to be like, it feels like home, but it also feels like I've got new stuff to master and learn.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset that you take into it as well in terms of like how you're going to enjoy the weapons. I personally really enjoyed the weapons that I played. I feel like the weapons that you pick really determined if you feel like it's like a proper iteration and like the next version of that. I feel like some of the weapons got a lot more than the others. Like Longsword got like massive sweeping changes to like its core systems and how it functions. It's got like the spirit release, it's got a ton of different stuff going in there. Same with the switch axe really, and definitely the bow with the tracer arrows and being able to kind of plop in those like coatings at will alongside having a discerning dodge. So definitely some of the weapons got a lot more in terms of a rework, so it definitely doesn't feel like it's like a fair disparity between them. But I also feel like it comes from looking at it coming from Rise, where the combat was just zany, right? It was very anime-esque in terms of the moves that we had. We had moves that would just throw you up in the air. We had moves that would just do an absolute craziness and a madness. Or if you're taking it from the world iteration, which was more back to basics than Rise, we can say at least, right? Obviously, Monster Hunter games before then were just like chop, 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 left and right. No, none of the craziness. But essentially, they definitely feel like an iteration from the world-based weapons rather than the Rise-based weapons, even though there are Rise-esque concepts in there in terms of some of the moves that you do get, obviously. But I would like to see, when the full game comes out, if there are additional moves that make the kind of systems make sense, because in the past few Monster Hunter games, there have been these systems that you unlock at a later stage that do give you more variety and options and choice. Hopefully they've taken some inspiration from Rise and they've introduced like something like a switch skill-esque system. I'm not saying exactly switch skills, but something that gives us additional moves and options or integrates into our kit a bit more, giving us more gameplay in terms of some of the other weapons that didn't get stuff for. But it is pretty weird, some of the weapons. So like the Lance has got like a complete rework to how it works, and it's got more of a learning curve to its counter. And weirdly, that counter definitely feels like it should be an offset, because a lot of the other moves could just offset like at a press of a button. But this counter, which is the charge counter, you have to kind of stand there, you charge it up, and then you thrust, and then you counter the monster, and it's really cool. But I don't understand why that's not an offset, but all the other counter basically are an offset. I feel like maybe they should consider adding that. Maybe that's something that's gonna come out at a later date.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where like my head's at as well with the weapons. Is I'm really curious if there is an expanded system that will unlock in the full game that gives us extra things. So the switch skills is, like you say, the perfect example of that. It would change some of your moves. I do wonder if we look at the Insect Glaive, which is obviously a very interesting one for people because the bouncing and the aerial combat is what was like iconic and super fun about the Insect Glaive. Even if it wasn't meta, like people don't care. That's what you want to do. What's fun, and if bouncing around on the Insect Glaive is fun, to take that away does feel like a bit of a burn. And I'm just like, it's like the identity of the weapon. Even in Rise, they kind of doubled down on it with that downward stab that would actually scale in damage the more bounces you did. So it encouraged that bouncing aerial playstyle. So to then like strip it away on the next game just feels super odd. So I do wonder if things like that maybe will be introduced in whatever mechanic or system could perhaps be in the full game or not. So like the Insect Glaive with the Rising Spiral Slash as its sort of like new playstyle is definitely a really interesting one, and one that I personally find really fun and engaging to chase the essence, to consume them, to refund them and repeat. So I really like that playstyle, but it does feel like there's certain things that are missing, or like you say with that Lance counter, maybe there is an offset version, so it could be a counter version or an offset version if a switch skill system of some kind is in place. So it'll be really interesting to see when the full game comes out. But I think at a top level, I did have a lot of fun on the weapons, and I was pretty pleased with many of the changes. Maybe not all of the changes, but many of them. But let's talk about focus mode, because that's the biggest thing across all the weapons.
And yeah, I kind of really fell in love with focus mode on certain weapons as well. It works pretty well. I did try it on the bow, so when I say try, by the way, this means like toggling the focus mode on and off. So there's different options that you can have for your focus mode. You can just have it down, so you press the L2 button, focus mode comes up, and you do your thing. But when you toggle the focus mode on some weapons turn into Chef Kiss, and like the Lance was definitely one that benefited from that. Greatsword was another weapon that heavily benefited from having the toggle mode on, essentially, because you could just like have the toggle mode and you're just rotating your characters during True Charge Slash like without even having to press a button. So it reduces some of the mental stack, like we said in our guide, essentially. I don't know what it was like for you on your weapons in terms of like the switch axe and the weapons, if you rest with a toggle or not.
There's a bit to say. So the first thing is that the toggle kind of had a little bit of like aim assist in it, in that, like you say, it would redirect the camera, and in some cases, like if a Chatakabra was jumping over your head, it would fully spin you back around. And that was just weird. That's just a weird thing to get used to, but very strong in like a traditional Monster Hunter experience. And also does help alleviate some of those concerns that people have with the controller, with different inputs being hard to do because of like claw grip and stuff like that. If the toggle focus mode means you can not have to hold L2, and it will help steer your camera, so it helps alleviate those things. But my biggest thing for focus mode is just as the beta went on and you got more used to using it and more familiar with it, it seems like you're going to be using focus mode an awful lot. Like, it's very strong and very good for actual gameplay. Like, we've played thousands of hours of Monster Hunter, like between us, even more. We're used to positioning and having our hunter facing a certain way, and that whole skill set, you can still do it and you could ignore focus mode, but that whole skill set is you got to almost wrestle with it a little bit, because now we can just use focus mode and directly face the monster no matter what move we're doing, whether it's like a slide move or coming out of a combo. You can just immediately be facing where you actually want to be facing just by using that feature, let alone the fact that you can actually turn attacks, like turn an SAED 180 degrees to hit the monster because it moved. Like, those things are game-changingly like big impactful things, even though it's just like a mode that can be pressed or toggled. So focus mode is just like super intriguing to me, and it fundamentally changes a lot of the gameplay for me.
Yeah, definitely as a seasoned player though, during the game as a whole, even with focus mode, for some reason in Wilds, I'm just having so much difficulty with like positioning and direction. So like the switches between focus mode and non-focus mode, the controls are not like gelling with me yet in terms of like hitting things. So I'm hitting like just my spirit thrust on my longsword to go into things as well. So I don't know if I've got butterfingers on things in terms of like Wilds, but like any other Monster Hunter game, I'm pretty fine with like hitting everything that I need to hit. But this one, they've done something, and it's just feeling a little bit off to me, and it will just take me a little bit of time to get used to. But definitely a fun addition in terms of like the focus mode, in terms of being able to change and do stuff. But you need to change, like rewire your mind to be like, am I in focus mode? Am I not in focus mode? What is the camera like behavior at the moment, and all of that stuff. But it's pretty cool.
For some weapons, it actually did like either open up a new move or change a move when you're in focus mode. So that's like another layer of complexity. But what I think will happen is, as the game comes out and people start sinking in hours and hours, is I think focus mode will just be a staple, and I think it's going to become like a major thing that everyone is going to be using, just because it's so like strong for that redirection and positioning. But I think that's pretty much all the major points, right?
Well, one thing I just want to say, because I know not everybody's going to watch the Lance videos, because there's like not that many of us like Lance players out there, but guys, something to know is that the Lance is actually really cool because it gets its own dynamic like animations for doing like stuff. It's got like this super cool block thing where you can like walk through the Balahara's like sludge, and it's like one of the only weapons that gets that. It's super cool. I hope they have more of that in the actual full game. That's all I wanted to say. Just like praise the Lance. More Lance players, please.
I mean, can we just, if we're going to, a tangent, Lance is the ultimate cavalry support now. Like,
oh yeah,
that riding skill of the Lance is just insane. No one haven't got that. Like, there's different mount attacks and stuff, but being a freaking jousting knight on the back of a sacred is crazy. But hopefully that gives you a good insight into our thoughts on all of the different things in the beta. Obviously, it was just a beta, so there is a lot of things that will be subject to change. I wouldn't be surprised if weapons get rebalanced, if moves get renamed or changed, if performance gets a complete overhaul, or so we can hope. And, just generally more things.
I think that's a good point. There's obviously going to be people watching this video now that are going to be in the comments saying doom posting or whatever, but like if you actually look at the changes from the demos, or for Rise demo to like the actual final release for Monster Hunter games in recent years, essentially there have been quite extensive changes to the actual weapons and the final weapons that we ever got, in terms of like even adding guard points to weapons, buffing stuff, and like nerfing stuff as well. So these are not the final iterations, and they will be tuning. There is a long time for development until the final release. They still got 3 months. That's the devs sitting there for 3 months tuning stuff until it feels good to play, essentially. So it is a while.
Even between the Gamescom demo to this beta, that I felt that moves had been renamed. The performance has definitely been a jump up from Gamescom. Also, the Gamescom PlayStation demos that were on the show floor would crash every now and then, and I wasn't seeing that when I played on PlayStation in this beta. So there's already been some pretty big jumps just between that. So I look forward to whatever the next beta or demo is, and obviously the full release, and to see what iterations there are. So it's just something to be mindful of, that this is of course a beta, but it's definitely worth talking about and voicing concerns along the way to hope that they get listened to. But we're going to have more Monster Hunter coming on the channel soon, guys, so make sure you're locked in down below, and drop a like if you enjoyed this little impressions. Well, not so little impressions, actually. Hopefully this was a fun watch on the side for you guys. But yeah, we'll have more coming your way soon, so don't miss out. But that's it for now, so bye-bye.
Bye-bye.